Warning, this video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and I've got with me today Andrew. So Andrew, thank you for being here. I know you're very busy. Do you want to say what's up?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing some charts again today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, what I'll do is I'll click over to your screen. And did you say you wanted to start with Bitcoin perhaps? And then from there, I guess we will just see how it goes.
Yeah, it sounds good. This is a chart that I just posted on Friday on Twitter. And I think it's similar to your outlook. Like we've had a pretty clear intermediate cycle low that came out in the summer. And I wasn't sure if we were going to have a double and kind of inversion. But that's what we ended up getting. And so we've pretty clearly had a daily cycle high. We've had a swing low here that's formed. So I think that we should just expect it to kind of bounce around and we'll see how low it goes. To me, there's some like horizontal support here at around 60K. And we also have this this fork that's I've connected from the 4-year cycle low all the way up here to the top. So I think 60K seems kind of reasonable for a target, but I know some people like what's his name, Credible Crypto, he's thinking it's going to come all the way back down here. So in the end, who knows? But I prefer sticking with timing. I get the question a lot, and you do too, like, well, what's the target? What's the target? What's the target? I'm like, I don't know, around November 5th or 6th, that's the target. And whatever the price is at that time is what I'll be happy to work with. Another thing interesting to think about now is like, where are we in the intermediate cycle? Like, because we're kind of, in October and we bottomed in August. So really coming down here into early November's week 13. And then we get an ICL probably at the end of January, beginning of February. So interesting to think about at this point where we are in terms of the next likely larger bottom. But I think what we're most likely to see is once we get this low come in, I think it's an aggressive move up. How high up? It depends on where it goes. If I'm going to use the fork as justification, then if we're topping this year, I think we'd probably top sub 100K. If we go a little bit further into next year, we can get above there. But I don't think it's. I personally don't think it's going to be a crazy. I think it's going to be fast. I think it's going to be 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks. But I don't know if it's going to be fast and shoot up to 150K. Maybe it will. But I think there's a lot of people that just have their eye on 120 to 150K. And so maybe it's going to top out short. Like there was that one theory I forget I read about last summer. Like there was a divisible theory and it was saying 85K would be the top. So maybe that'll be it. Maybe it'll go up to 85K. But really for me, I'm mostly just looking, we got a daily cycle low here. I think the next daily cycle tops. Like, we get into December, maybe before day 45, December 22nd, day 35, December 12th. I don't know that the markets are going to go beyond this year and keep pumping. And I'll move over into SPX as part of the justification for that. I posted this chart before, and it just shows that every 17 years we get a topping point on this yearly chart. It doesn't look like much, but they kind of alternate between 40 to 50% declines and a 20% decline. So back here, back in the end of the 30s, that was about a 45% decline. Then we had a 23 or 24. Then we had another significant one. This was about almost close to 50%. Then we had another low 20s. And then, of course, the GFC, I think, was 55%. So if you're using that kind of rhythm, that means that the top here should be about at least a 20% decline. But, hey, maybe it's going to be much more than that. And I noticed this just as I was looking it up, that pretty big yearly bearish divergence here showing up. So I think the top is going to come before the end of this year would be my base case. So that just doesn't give it a lot of time. So if Bitcoin's going to top, it's going to top in the next daily cycle. The next daily cycle high is probably going to be the high in my opinion. But we'll see if that actually ends up happening or not. But if it is, and if it's like a fifth wave, then it could just be just an absolute straight line. It's a straight line up to well, wherever it goes, maybe it does make the top of this forecast straight line up to 140K. But we'll see about that.
What are your thoughts on a decoupling? What I mean, it's definitely a non-zero probability, but do you think there's
Mhm.
what sort of probability do you give it that Bitcoin can continue to run to, I don't know, April or something, with the stock market topping this year?
I mean, it's non-zero because everything, you can't say it can't happen, but I would be shocked. I would be absolutely shocked. I wouldn't be, um, I don't know. It's not a 0% probability, but I would not, I don't consider it very likely at all because if you look at the historical relationship, they run together. So there would have to be some sort of exogenous reason, like, I don't know, like if Russia said that they were like the stock market goes down because China invades Taiwan, um, and China's like, oh, by the way, we're collecting Bitcoin, then sure, then that could happen. But outside of something like that, I just can't see it.
And what do you think about the possibility that this? I know you mentioned the fifth wave a minute ago, but I find commodities tend to have extended fifths more often than any other asset
Mhm.
class. So I do think there's some credibility to the idea that we see an extended fifth here. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, the framework that I'm using to think about the markets is that 2024 is very likely to have at least a 20% decline that happens. So I guess the question that could be asked would be if I go over to just open up a monthly chart on the SPX because I really don't see decoupling as being likely. If I can find my like a late 4-year cycle low. So the 2022 low, like, it was probably an early 4-year cycle low, but it was only month 31, which is very early. That's 17 months early. So is there a possibility that we're gonna get one of these where we move down into a 4-year cycle low, like sometime in April or May, and it's very late? But it's just 60, this would if it comes to month 60, 61, 62, that's 14, 13, 12 months late versus 17 months early. So from that point of view, it's entirely possible that we come down here and get a 4-year cycle low. If that were to happen, then maybe in conjunction with Bitcoin you could have a move up to towards 100K, and then have a very, very hard correction back down to this kind of this is essentially an accumulation range here. So maybe we just retrace to the back of this accumulation range from here, and it's kind of a slower move down um, into February or March, and then we get the real extended fifth wave. And this was just like an initial wave out of a breakout that just gets retraced. So it's possible. Um, I've seen some fractals that look like they could extend into next year. So if I jump over, where was it? It's an apple here. So apple's a chart where I'm like, to me it says blow off top is coming. I have a fractal here, so I'll jump around a little bit. I have a fractal here that I took from gold. It was based on actually just a short-term gold hourly chart. So I had mentioned previously, I think back in September, I'm like, we have a bull flag here and we've just double tapped on it. So gold is going to go have a blow off top. This is the start of a blow off top fractal. And so if I just take the bars pattern off this and I take the whole thing the way that gold is played out from around here, I just all the way up. I can't even see it. I'll just grab that and I paste that over onto Apple. Okay, and I paste this onto Apple. Like, you get a pattern that goes well into next year, and it's really pretty uncanny if you look the way that they've matched so far. Let's mess around with this a little bit. There, something like that. Like, they've had a pretty good match, and like this just brings you, if it continues to follow perfectly, which is in my view unlikely, then you could say that hey, the market's gonna keep going. So is it possible that we go further into next year? It's possible, but that wouldn't be my base case. Like, here we have, this is the fractal, and I mean, I think that Apple is showing that we're going to come down. I mean, it might be an Apple only kind of thing. Maybe this is nothing to do with the rest of the market. But Apple looks like it's going to come back and test 200 and then give a blow off top. I I don't expect that it's going to continue following gold perfectly the way that it has here. But coming up here and getting up into, like, 280, 270 up here, and then before rolling over, I think that's reasonable. But markets aren't really knowable. We can bash our heads against the wall, and then maybe this is just a fluke, and here this is gonna not gonna roll over here. But back to the original question, I don't think that Bitcoin is gonna. There's no evidence to suggest to this point that Bitcoin will outperform while the SPY or stocks are just getting hammered. So I don't think that's all that likely.
Yeah, I have to agree, to be honest. But seeing you pull up the monthly S&P chart that shows the 4-year cycle lows due, seeing you pull, yeah, this one
Yeah.
here, seeing you pull this up made me wonder if we get an initial sell-off into that 4-year cycle low, the stocks then bounce into what ends up being a lower high or a double top. And whilst that bounce is occurring, we perhaps see Bitcoin. So wait, let me backtrack a little bit. So as we put in the top for the S&P before the 4-year cycle decline, perhaps Bitcoin hits that magical 100K number that I think an awful lot of people seem to think is, in my experience, a lot of people think Bitcoin can't do more than 100K. They think that, like you said,
Right.
that 5.3 rule gives us about an 85K top. I see a lot of people saying 95K max. And I think if we did get to 100K, give or take a little bit, a lot of people will be selling and unloading there. And so I wonder if perhaps we squeeze to 100K very quickly, which is what the cycles kind of suggest, as you already touched on earlier. And then the S&P tops at the same time. The S&P begins its decline to that 4-year cycle low. At the same time, Bitcoin is selling off heavily from 100K, which is that big psychological level. And then from the 4-year cycle low, and perhaps Bitcoin reaches back into that 60K neighborhood, maybe then Bitcoin goes on to form another higher high, and we see the S&P kind of put in a lower high and then truly start to roll over. I wonder if that is a possible scenario here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if it was going to happen, that's how it would happen. You get your 4-year cycle low here, and then maybe you bounce to the lower high. I don't know, 5,500K or 5,300K or whatever. Um, and then in that case, then as long as the stock market is not declining, then Bitcoin could continue going. It could have a very big top. But, like, if we did get this decline from 6,200 or whatever down to 4,800, and that is about a 20% decline, um, 23% decline, then you got to think that Bitcoin's going to go down 40%. And if we take 40% off of Bitcoin from, say, we're up near 100K, well, back to 60K ish, So, I mean, actually, really, that's would be a retest of the breakout area if that were the case. If we went back from 100K to the 60K area, you'd be retesting what is essentially the breakout. So hey, that could be. Um, we have to wait and see. But I do think that um, one thing that was interesting on this chart is that if you look across it, you can see your angles. So you could see a first angle here, right? And you can see this trend line is essentially potentially a second angle, So would we come down here and then get a third angle that lasts? How long do you say normally these angles last?
On average, 2 to 8 weeks, and an extended one would be 12. And I think we're already something. If this current setup is the third angle, then we're already something like 9 or 10 weeks into it.
So then maybe on a monthly chart. So imagine we get up to 6,200 and then we crash down to 40, what about 4,800, 47, 4,600. And then from here we have, if you take your extended third angle and we use months, you have like a 1-year rally from 4,800 up to, what did what does David Hunter say? 7,500.
7,500,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. So then maybe if this is the first angle here, and then this is a second angle here, then we have a third angle here. Something really stupid and crazy parabolic, maybe. But the reason, and I might give that more credit than I normally would, when I think, just thinking out loud right now, because technically this setup here is set up for about a 20% decline. Like if we're just using the alternating, it goes, we have about a 40%, about a 20%, about 45, another 20, 50. And this is set up for about another 20% if that's going to continue rhyming in that way. So a 20% decline would simply bring us back down to around this level, around this kind of this inclining trend line. It's possible. And I know the real estate cycle guys are, they tell me all the time that it's not going to, like, it should top with that cycle in 2026 or at the end of 2025 or something like that. So who knows? And
Yeah.
in which case, then maybe you get the breakout of Bitcoin to 100K, come all the way back down to 60 or 50K, or maybe even come back further and come back down here. Because what we have these 4-year cycles on Bitcoin, and they've always rhymed with some sort of cycle on stocks. But if this wasn't a 4-year cycle low on stocks, it was just a half cycle low. Then when Bitcoin got this 4-year cycle low, it was just kind of coincidental. So then if stocks are going to get their actual 4-year cycle low here, then Bitcoin would decline to around a month 30 low or something like that before maybe left translating its cycle. Right, if I go to a monthly chart on Bitcoin, I don't know if I have anything set up on a monthly chart here, but okay, here we go. If we go from the bottom here and we get a top in December, that's month 25, and then we have a really crazy sell-off into whatever it would be month 28. And if it comes back down here, it would look like, you would get below the MA10, it would be looking like a 4-year cycle low. But then it would have come early. And then it's just coincidental because it's rhyming with stocks. Like this one, we got the 4-year cycle low here. And that was 2018. The 4-year cycle on stocks was back in 2016 or 15. I have to confer with the other chart. It's 2016, 2015, and then undercut in 2016. So, the Bitcoin is kind of following stocks with what stocks are doing. So if stocks go to a 4-year cycle low here, then Bitcoin probably comes along for the ride and makes a month an early low, an unexpected low. So we could go up, down, and then the real blow off. Like if that happened, and then the stocks would go into up into late 2025, then for sure you could get Bitcoin down here and then going up into 200Ks for sure. Like that would not, if A then B, if Bitcoin is, or if stocks are going to decline back into 4K and then go up to 7 or 8K or something like that, then and there's some you could probably think about some logical reasons that could happen. Like if Trump were to win the election, then he's not going to want to have a weak stock market. You think that he wants a major stock market decline on his watch? Now, it does, just because he doesn't want it doesn't mean it wouldn't happen. Like maybe there's nothing he can do, but he would be demanding a flood of liquidity. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to sit around. So we'll see. Doesn't mean that just because he might want that, and doesn't mean it would happen, but it's interesting to think about. My weekly chart on stocks, and so what I talked to in the summer, I was saying that this we're getting an intermediate cycle low here at week 41. I said that this was half cycle high, half cycle low, intermediate cycle high, intermediate cycle low, and so that's mostly still been my outlook. But on the daily time frame, I've noticed that there's a potential setup here, that if this was actually your intermediate cycle low, we had then one daily cycle low, and then we failed, and then we get another daily cycle low here, like inversion out of the half cycle low, and then we come up, and then we're at a point where we're going to decline viciously and get a failed daily cycle to set the intermediate cycle low after and get an Irish cycle potentially, like the no fail fail no fail fail cycle, and there's that potential setup here, which would be a pretty heavy decline from where we are from 58 back down to have to go under here. So there's that potential. So right now on stocks, I'm kind of flat myself because I think we're going to decline one way or another. Whether it's that vicious of a sell-off to kind of reset sentiment, or if it's going to be a kind of a more traditional daily cycle low that we're going to get. I got to open up where I have. Okay, I don't know where it is, but anyways, so that's possible. We could have a larger sell-off coming here. Um, but that would be probably the less likely scenario for stocks, in my opinion. I think what's more likely here is this was, like I suggested in the summer, that this was the intermediate cycle low. And then we still have a daily cycle low here. And now we're going to decline to our next daily cycle low coming with Bitcoin into the election. This one was short, 23 days. And so uh, this next one, my clicker right here. Next one is going to be, day 42 is the day of the election, right? So somewhere around the election, we'll get our next daily cycle low. So we might have a bit of a sell-off into like, maybe even undercut these lows here and kind of retest this kind of breakout area. Like if you look at this as a cup and handle, like we come down here and we come back and we'll retest the breakout area, maybe they're around 6,500, or sorry, 5,650, and then kind of reach up to targets into the low 6,000s. And here's just a measured move. Out of that takes us, where you would expect, right about 61, 6,200. And to me, that's probably the top.
Can I ask why do you favor the inversion there and not a half cycle low?
Well, it's a time where you would think you get an inversion. I mean, the decline was steep. The decline was steep, almost like an echo of the decline here. And so a steep decline, we really pulled the MA10 down. Normally on a half cycle low, the MA10 might flatten out, but it doesn't normally pull down that hard. Like here, this is a daily cycle low. It did pull down. Here on a half cycle low, there was not a lot of it. It kind of flattened out, didn't get pulled down. Here, it was a very steep decline. So, and then if you're kind of counting the cycles if you count it from here, then we have a day, I guess that's probably the low there, day 42, which is a regular timing, but then, we're looking pretty bearish here. Again, we made a lower high on Friday. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that this wasn't the daily cycle or just because things look bearish here, but then things start kind of looking a little bit toppy on this. And that makes more sense that if we had a daily cycle high come down and then we just kind of retest that high, and this is our declining trend line that we'll want to see break. So I think that's the more likely scenario. And we closed before once, twice, and now 3 closes before the MA10. So I use the MA10 pretty as one of my main tools for cycle analysis. We're above it, we're happy. We're below, we're declining. With exceptions that you can be below it for a couple days, but you wouldn't want to see it to the extent where we're starting to pull it down, and we're starting to pull it down here. So I think chances are we're going to decline with Bitcoin into the election. And I mean, there's election cycles that say that's pretty typical. How big of that decline we'll see. Maybe it's not that hard. Maybe we decline to 5,700, or maybe we retest this kind of breakout area. If we did come back to this area here, that would be like a good entry, just based on traditional technical analysis. Back test the breakout of the cup and handle, and then we're up to 61, 6,200. So I think that's kind of what makes sense to me here.
Sure.
But,
And
we'll
do you agree that based on the cycles aligning with the elections, that the implications are they're going to be well received by markets, regardless of who gets in? That's been my interpretation. Because of the cycle lows align, it kind of tells us that it's kind of unusual to see everything just bounce up and day 2 or day 3 left translate and roll over and fail. It's not impossible, but for me, the fact that the elections line up with the cycle lows kind of implies that regardless of the outcome, we're probably going to see markets react favorably.
Yeah, I agree. It won't really matter who the candidate is. The cycle is the cycle. Um, we'll decline to it because there's the unknown, who's going to win. Markets don't like uncertainty. So as soon as we get that into that daily cycle or time frame, of course I would say that the markets or the markets will react to the election. So if there's a bit of a hung election for a few days, then maybe we kind of play around in here, and it takes some time for it to resolve. Like it takes, I think in the 2020 election, it was 2 or 3 days or something like that. So if it was another 2 or 3 days for it to be resolved, then maybe the cycle low gets pushed out. but that's the cycle low is gonna come around there. We just from the count, it makes sense. On Bitcoin's count, it makes sense too. So I think things are lining up for that to be the low, and then for a nice year end push. And if this is daily cycle 2, then we get our top in daily cycle 3. I think. I think we come here into early December. It might even be a right translated daily cycle 3. And then I think from there, like, early December is when we're gonna see the top, because things are getting pretty extended here. I was I saw like a couple weeks ago, I saw you go into that what do you call the spaces on Twitter. I had seen it was open and I wasn't gonna go, and then I saw you join it, so I went in just to hear what they were saying. And I'm like, when those guys were talking, I was just like, wow, I think we're closer to the top than I would like to admit. Like the one guy was saying, God, there were years left in this cycle. And I mean, we could just bring up your angles here. And I think it's possible we come down here and touch here. Or possibly we could retap. I don't know. You could tell me, because I don't really use angles as often as you do, but maybe we come down here and tap this angle again before setting it. That would be a more bearish decline here, but a buying opportunity, I think.
It's possible for sure. I actually favor the one you're drawing right now as we speak. That's the one I favor, and it's unusual for them to last, like I said earlier, much more than 8 weeks. But I've seen them as long as 12, and I think if we were to get another daily cycle ish from the elections here, or at least half a daily cycle to see a top, that would put us somewhere. If we keep hold of this line, roughly speaking, or if we maybe wick it and then recover it out of the election, something like that, that would put us somewhere in that 62 to 6400 neighborhood, and then it would look incredibly parabolic, at least from my perspective. And like you say, in those spaces, it was all narrative, and those guys have been right for a while because they've been super bullish, and we've been melting up across asset classes since the lows in 2022. But like you, I came out of there incredibly nervous. I was like, oh man, because every time I kind of challenged them, and I was like, doesn't anyone feel a little bit nervous here? They were all just kind of like, no, it's a new paradigm, bro. AI is here, bro. Like, this thing's got years left in it. And I was thinking, man, like, that's not a good sign at all.
No, I remember back at the lows, I had a follower that was kind of giving me a hard time about Nvidia. And this was back when Nvidia was like, if I can find the chart. If I can, where are you? This is a mess in here. My charts. I don't know what yours, but like my watch list is an absolute mess. And I tell myself that once in a while that I'm going to clean it up, but it just doesn't happen. Anyway, so this was back when Nvidia was like here, or maybe around in here, and the guy was, and I was like, well, I mean, like from a cycles point of view, it just looks like this is a right translated intermediate cycle, so it's likely to continue. And then he just like blocked me, and I was like, uh-oh. And I think he was short at the time too. So,
Oh no.
But this is like, even actually we can just look. I'm gonna delete this stuff here because I don't really need it. Even here, like Nvidia looks, it's very stretched, and this is actually like this kind of move here. It looks like a topping pattern. Like this is it's almost like a head and shoulders where the head is smaller. You got like I like to call this. I call this like a spider top, because you have like a daddy long legs here and the body of the spider, and you have like the other leg coming out here. So I don't know that it doesn't continue up, but it looks like it's getting stretched. It is very stretched. Like this is a log chart, but like look at that. Like this is one angle. This is just all third angle.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I noticed in that spaces was people were saying things like, I mean, fundamentals are backing this. This stock is still cheap relative to its revenue and things like this. And I was thinking, we're on PE multiples of 20 to 50 across the board. And they think everything's cheap and fairly priced. It's a bit of a warning sign for me.
I mean, and fair enough, that has been supported by that so far. But like, earnings reports change. All it takes is one bad earnings report, and you're going to see a 10% decline. Like I think Apple has their earnings report coming out, and I actually think that it's tomorrow, or tomorrow. And so I actually think it's probably going to come out bad, because This is a pretty clear Irish cycle to me, where we had our intermediate cycle low, daily cycle 1, left translated, failed daily cycle 2, right translated, no fail, and now this next has right translated, but it's matching a pattern that should bring it back to 200 before setting, up a final parabolic kind of move, matching similar to what we saw on gold. This is too far zoomed out, but you get the same idea. We get our little bull flag here. We double tapped right on it. We got a move out. We got a sharp move back, and then went higher. And I thought that this was probably going to be the top here, but it wanted a little bit more. And it looks like after hours, when Israel struck Iran, looks like it got a little bit more in after hours too, actually. But this is a blow off top move here. So gold will decline, and when it declines, it'll come back pretty hard, and the target would be to come forward to back somewhere back in the bull flag area. So that would be on the regular gold chart. I think that's in around the 2400 area. Yeah, so that's where it should come back and retest this area here, which for gold bugs, they're gonna have a hard time dealing with that mentally. But it's what should be expected after you get like this. This is just see the parabolic rise, and really you can probably start from here. Your angle 1, angle 2, and then third angles somewhere in here.
Yep.
So this should come back down, and the target would be the first angle. So I mean, I can't draw that angle here because this is a little bit too flat, but like I said, somewhere in the 2400 seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I also think that's probably a very, very, very nice opportunity to get hold of gold, silver, miners, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about this was our 7 to 8 year cycle low. So after it comes back down here, like it should continue up. And I think if you think in terms of, waves, you have wave 1, wave 2 pullback. This is wave 3, and it's strong, and very, very sustained. And then we get the wave 4 ABC correction, or however that's going to look, wave 4 pullback. And then this is a commodity like we were talking about earlier, and they get the extended fifth waves, and I mean, GLDs, I'm sure, is going to pass 300. We'll see how I would anticipate in terms of cycles. And so on the GLDs chart, I'll talk about the cycles here. There's a kind of a pattern of getting lows every around 45 to 50 weeks. So this is the longest one that I've counted out here, which was 58, maybe 52. We got a short one into this yearly cycle low, and we can even see here that it broke this trend line here, which is evidence that I use. The trend line breaks. I don't know, but I know you use the trend lines for evidence for angles and for determining like the velocity of what's coming. And then I use trend line breaks to look for entries. So we had this trend line break down here, and so we kind of had a bit of an inversion, a shorted cycle here, and then a shorted cycle coming out. Then COVID brought us to a month 45 low, which is pretty well right on schedule. Then not month 45, week 45, a week 50 here, then week 40 here, which is a bit short, but then a week 46 in the bottom, week 48 here about last fall in October, and then we're already on this was end of week 54. So this is very, very extended, very, very extended. So I think it's going to drop like a rock to get through this declining trend line probably by beginning of December.
Oh, I just thought.
Really, pardon me.
Sorry to interrupt. I just thought I expect the next CPI release to be shockingly cold, the coldest, most surprising to the downside. And I just wonder if that is the catalyst to top gold. I wonder if suddenly they go, oh my gosh, CPI came in at low 2 or 1 point something. Then maybe that would cause that significant sharp drop.
Yeah, well, you know what? Miners are already starting to say that we've topped and it's going to come down. Like this is a pretty bad weekly candle here. Excuse me. Is this my inverse chart? What am I doing here? Why am all my stuff moved around? Sometimes I like to invert my charts to try to figure out where we are from an inverted count to see where our lows could be or our highs could be coming in. But anyways, but yeah, we're week 11 here. So I mean that's the left translated cycle. That's perfect timing for this weekly cycle to left translate. So I think miners are telling us that's what's going to happen. And I forget which miner, I think it was Newmont. Yeah, Newmont. They released like a very, very, very good results, and then it just totally tanked. Like this is a massive move down, like 16-17% decline. And it was almost a single day decline too. Like look at that. That's a crazy decline.
Yeah, we
And it was on the heels of like it was one of their best earnings reports in a couple years.
Yeah, we were covering this in the members section. We got in very early on, and funny enough about this one, actually, I sold way too early, and all of the members went, "Nah, I'm staying long," and then they all massively outperformed me on this trade. But I managed to get people in low down, and yeah, once we saw this red candle, it was like that's probably the end, and also that is probably like you just said, a big piece of confluence to say gold is about to have something similar
Yeah,
happen to it.
yeah. And then the interesting thing here is on so if we kind of look at so if we look at GLD, we should get a quick decline here because it's already very, very late. This will already be its largest kind of yearly or long intermediate cycle. So if we're on daily cycle 4, and which is around day 10 or 11 or 12, I can't remember, we should expect a low around day 30, which would bring us into late November, which really that's going to be a very long cycle, 60 weeks. So the next one should be shorter. The next one should be probably, at least be the regular length of 45-ish. But once we get this low here, it kind of doesn't match with the low on GDX. GDX's low isn't likely to come until 2025. So it's kind of a thing that you shouldn't always do, is kind of like extrapolate one thing from another. But if GLD is going to come here and it's going to set its low early November, but GDX is not going to set its low until later in or early 2025. Like get 20 weeks. 25 is in January, February. Why would it set its low not at the same time as GLD, unless perhaps stocks are getting ready for a 20% decline? And so we would see outperformance of gold relative to stocks, but then gold stocks would get hammered with the SPY, with SPX. So I think that we probably see this move down, and then a bounce, and then another move down to a higher low in that February timeframe, which would kind of match with an initial sell-off of stocks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
So
sense.
we'll see what happens. Where's my month? I can pull out a monthly chart of to find. I've so many layouts with my charts that they're all over the place. So I have to someday I'll get to organizing them properly. So anyways, we have our month 30 low here, and then the month 30 low would be in March, or maybe becomes month 29, 28, January, February. But that would be the expected time for a low on GDX, which I would anticipate being a very good buying opportunity across the board, because I think once that low comes in, it's going to be a sight to behold as it moves into the next, as GLD moves into its next yearly cycle high. It'll be a very strong move, probably topping it at around the same time. I think probably September, maybe October of next year, we'll get that next top, and it'll be, gold will be 32, 33, 35, maybe higher.
Yeah, I have to
and then
agree.
that cycle will extend, into I think 2027. Well, it'll extend into 2027, and then you'll have maybe a 2-year decline into the low, or something like that, or 18-month decline. But it'll be very powerful
Yeah, for
for the
sure.
rest of the gold cycle.
Can I get you to pull a silver chart, please?
Sure. I have a better weekly cycle chart with an actual count on it somewhere, but anyways, this looks like wave 1, 2, wave 3 here, and it's cresting, and we'll come back down, and then I think next year the silver's going to $50 for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to be above 50 before Q1, or before the end of Q1 next year.
I don't know if it would be before the end of Q1 next year, and the reason I say that, I have no, that's gold to stocks. I have a gold to silver ratio chart somewhere where I was doing some analysis on it. It looks like it needs more time. Where is it? So that here. So gold, here's the gold silver ratio cycle chart. And so we just had, actually I had a larger cycle somewhere. So if we take this here, we have one cycle. We have here, we have another larger cycle. And then we should expect another larger cycle here, which ultimately resolves to the downside. But we get these bounces here. So we had a bounce on week 22. Here we had a bounce week 17. Here there was a bounce week 19. Here we're on week 21. We're going to get a bounce. And so it's going to come up here. I would say it's going to come up and probably get above these highs here and potentially get above this previous high here. So if we get a really sharp sell-off, like almost a borderline deflationary event, then it could come back up here. This is the opposite. This is silver to gold. Now where did I put my actual count? Just bear with me for a second here, because I know I have an actual cycle count on both of these. That's kind of looks at the larger cycle. Okay, there we go. It's gold, silver, and silver to gold. So on silver to gold, we have these cycles that are, around 50 to 70 weeks. And so we are now on week 39. So I think the expectations here is that it's going to continue going lower. And so when does that low come? Is going to be, say, if it's early in the low 50s, it's January, February. If it's a longer one, then it comes out in May probably. So what does the decline for this ratio look like? Well, this here, I mentioned this showing up on Nvidia. This is that kind of the spider top pattern where you have the one leg, the body of the spider, and then the next leg. And the measured move target for that it's a pretty big decline. This is your measured move target. So you break down and you're going down here, which when we go back to the gold to silver ratio is going back up here. So that doesn't mean that that's going to happen, but it's something to be aware of. So this likely declines into the first quarter, finding a bottom in the first quarter. And so if silver's underperforming gold, then gold will not be acting bullishly yet. And I think that there's some sense to that, because after you get a big move up and then you get a big move down, there's usually some basing that happens. So if it's basing here during kind of the end of Q4 of this year into beginning of Q1, so we have like we get a regular length weekly cycle here. So we have our weekly cycle that comes in, say, beginning of December, late November. We have a weekly cycle here that is kind of flat or basing. So then maybe that goes into March, 18, 19, 20 weeks. And that's where we kind of the move up and the move back down. That's the higher low. And GDX undercuts, and silver probably undercuts too. And then from there, I think that's when it'll be off to the races, probably, after March. I think that's when whatever's going to happen is going to happen to cause the probably very large stimulus to come out that pushes these things forward.
Very interesting. I've been working with the assumption we will hit a weekly cycle low for gold and silver soon, and then silver's just going to scream higher. That's been my base case. But if it takes a little longer, I don't mind waiting. I've waited long enough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's patience is the most important thing. Not being in a rush to make a trade, because early is wrong. Early is the same as being wrong a lot of the time.
Yep.
Now, on the other hand, you could say that. Excuse me. On the other hand, sometimes you could say it's better to be a day early, a year early than a day late. So, as long as you're not leveraged, then you could certainly buy miners in December, and if they undercut in March, whatever. Because if that's more of an investment, you have a thesis that you're like, we'll get a decline, and then it'll be buy time. And if you're a cycle early, then it's not a big deal as an investor, because really as an investor, if you think that I bought this and I think it's a great deal and it goes on sale in 3 months and I can get it 20% cheaper, that's great. I mean, I like buying my clothes when they're on sale. It's not a bad idea to buy stocks when they go on sale too. If you're bullish on something, then you want better prices. So I don't think that's a problem in my point of view.
Yeah, for sure. From a longer term perspective.
Yeah, if you're trading and you want to get in and out, then you don't want to do that. You want to be more certain that you're nailing the bottom. Okay, so this was my here's my count on silver. So the silver chart matches better with the GDX. Where gold had its intermediate cycle low back in June, silver and GDX had their cycle low here. So I think what I'm expecting is that this is a week 11 top, and that it'll, like GDX, it's going to decline into 2025 and give us a low probably in February would be my guess for this here. We had a kind of this short cycle, and then a bit of a 20 weeks is pretty well normal. We'll get another normal length cycle, I think, to complete the decline. And then, we have you have angles setting up here. You had your first angle here, and now this is kind of a second angle, I suppose. And you come down here and you break that, and then you go up higher. Or maybe, this is going to be a big decline, and it's going to come back and test this part here, and then we're setting a second angle. I don't know, kind of using your methodology and in some of the charts that I'm looking at, like even on gold here, you kind of, this was a first angle, and this, I'm expecting this trend line to break, but you would probably say that this is a second angle, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to get a massive third angle that's going to come out of here. That's going to, kind of melt faces.
Yeah, that's been my base case. We're going to get a pullback, a sharp drop into a weekly cycle, and then set a third angle into what remains a more intermediate top.
Yeah, yeah. And that I think that top comes in before the end of next year, probably in, like, I was thinking probably around in the same time frame, because the cycles are on GLD would say that if we're going to get another here, where's our next 45 week low come in is in September or October or November. So we come down here, and then we get a parabolic move up after we, a little bit of basing, because that's the thing. Charts have to repair themselves. If you get a sharp decline, you don't normally just immediately get a sharp bounce up. So sometimes you get that sharp decline, and it needs to base and recover a little bit. So it could last a few months, like I was suggesting, and then we start moving up fast once that basing is complete.
Yep, for sure. Can you pull up a dollar chart, please, for my own sanity? Because I've been struggling with the dollar for a while, and my base case is that we haven't actually seen the 3 year cycle low yet, and I think it possibly, well, actually, for a long time I was expecting one final undercut of those. Is it the July lows, which I think most of the cycle traders have as the 3 year cycle low, and
Mhm.
now I'm starting to think that the most recent weekly cycle, which was 14 or 15 days ago, I'm starting to think that's probably the bottom in the dollar. Unless we see an almost immediate reversal, then I'm pretty close to saying that's it. It's in. So I'd love to get your thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
So this is my monthly chart, and I do have that July 2023 low as being the 3 year cycle low. But I've been kind of speculating that, I thought that we might actually see a 15-year cycle low come in sometime in the not too distant future. But that view is being challenged here. We had the last 15-year cycle here, then we had the deflationary event right here. That was the 2008 deflationary event. It came in and it went up. And so if we give ourselves this little white trend line here, taking essentially the next 3 year cycle low is the back test of the 15-year cycle low. So if we take that back test and we give ourselves a declining trend line, or inclining rather, then we have this 96 cent area that looks like it would be the target. And if we can break that, we get our 15-year cycle low, and then we can move up very powerfully out of there. But that's being challenged right now. Like this looks like a pretty clear, like the candle needs to close, but it will close pretty soon. And this looks like a pretty clear reversal, even like a pretty strong candle combination down, kind of, what's it called? A morning star candle, and then you come back up out of it. Like it's a pretty strong looking reversal. But the monthly candle does need to close. So what I think is that this was a 3 year cycle though, but that if we could still get that move down, and it would just be, a cycle inversion into a 15-year cycle low. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think that this looks like it's confirming that this is the low. And then it just depends on, can we get that one final move down here and undercut it into what I think is the 15-year cycle low.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
the other option, so go ahead.
I was going to say the only thing that makes me that's been the base case for me, and that makes the most sense. But I also see it seems to be a very, very, very crowded trade. Everywhere I look, everyone seems to be calling for a dollar breakdown.
Mhm.
Some of the most
Mhm.
some of the most extreme ends of those calls are like an 80 Dixie, which I think is far too much
Mhm.
personally. But I do see a lot of people eyeing 95 to down to 90, and it does make me wonder if it's just not going to happen because it's too crowded.
Yeah. I was doing a bunch of housework yesterday, and I threw on a podcast, and I was listening to Henrik talking to someone, and so of course 95 to 97 is his downside target on it. So I mean, I agree that there are a lot of people saying that that's what's going to happen. That's the area you're going to break down. It's going to be a severe breakdown. And so we'll have to see, because right now this looks like we broke this trend line here and set a minorly higher low. But look, if you look at the like my TSI is a sensitive kind of a sensitive way of measuring it. I have special settings in there that make it kind of sensitive, but it helps with trading. But right now it is going up a lot. We're already actually creating hidden bearish divergence. And so hidden bearish divergence is when you have a lower high on the price chart, but a higher high on TSI. So the TSI here to me suggests that we could see a rollover, and that perhaps that this is, if this was an ICL, which certainly looks like the case, or we had a really early week 4 or week 5 top, and then roll over into like an early January low. We could get a shorter, like week 18 or week 16 low into a final bottom here, and just kind of get that trend line. I actually had this tweet pinned for a while, that I thought that we were getting a 15-year cycle low coming up within the next I don't know, 6 to 8 months. But then so many people were asking me, what is DCL, what is HCL, what is ICL? So I put that kind of language back up so people could see it. But I think that there's a good chance that this still does happen. But right now the monthly chart is challenging it, but we got to get the monthly close first before we can draw any conclusion from the monthly chart. Because hey, maybe tomorrow or maybe Tuesday, it's going to start rolling over. Because really, this, if I can go to my daily cycles, don't have the count on here, but whatever. Like this is like very, very, very parabolic, very, very strong, and it might just be counter trend to a counter trend bounce. Where are we? Where we just hit 702, so it could come up a little bit higher and maybe reject off the 786 or something like that, and then before moving towards final low. But it clearly has been a very strong move. But interesting enough, stocks have not suffered from this very strong move. They've been pretty resilient, all things considered. So that kind of inverse relationship between the dollar and stocks has not exactly been all that prevalent over the last few weeks. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, I've been saying that we're about to get a daily cycle low for the dollar, and that is clearly going to be a right translated cycle. But then for me,
Hmm.
the tell should be whether we get a left or a right translation in daily cycle two, because
Yeah.
if it right translates again and we get all the familiar symptoms of having left behind a bottom for real, and like you said, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean stocks can't run or they have to move inverse to one another. But but yeah, I think if we can get a left
Yeah.
translation on daily cycle two, then happy days, and that certainly opens up those lower numbers. But we'll see, we'll see.
Hmm. We'll see. And so this is my 10-year yields chart. And it suggests that we're in the timing band to have a cycle low on the monthly chart. Like the range is kind of from the low 40s up into this one here was 66 months. So being at 54 means we could be in the range for it, or perhaps we have one more rollover. But I mean, right here we have like the appearance of kind of like a bull flag, yeah, or just kind of like an A, B, and C move down, and it looks pretty strong coming out. So we'll have to see. Like if we get the break here and we break out, then yields are clearly going higher, and the dollar will, I'm sure, follow suit. So if this is the low here on yields, then I'm sure that's the low on the dollar as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And even on TLT, um, this is not the right chart, but on TLT, like it looks. Well, you can just look on the monthly candle here. Like this is pretty bearish looking. Like it looks like it wants new lows here. And I know that I posted earlier in the week that It looked like it was going to roll over potentially. And then I know Arlovsky, he has a chart that suggests that there's a 7 to 8 year cycle low that comes up on TLT, which doesn't come due until late 2025, I believe. I think I tried to copy his chart actually. Alex, if you're listening, I copied your TLT chart somewhere. But let's see, open it up. Weekly. Yeah, like we're in the time on TLT, we're on the timing band for to have an intermediate cycle low. Like we should pop up, but the question is, we're going to pop up and go higher, or are we just going to have a short low pop up and then continue down lower? So we'll have to wait and see. Can't find it. I thought I copied his chart, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm more respectful than I give myself credit for. I was looking at semis last night, and I was thinking that this looks like this looks pretty toppy here to me. Like we had this cycle here, and then we came all the way back down. And so, if we have a week 28 low, then we have, if this is one long cycle, then we have a week 55 low. Or if we have a regular cycles, we have a week 28 low, a week 27 low, a week 25 low, and then this one came down fast, a week 15. So perhaps that this is a week 15 low, or we're kind of, I don't know, gonna move down a little bit and then make another move for the top potentially. But really, this looks like you had an angle here, you had an angle here, and maybe that this was a third angle here on the semiconductor index.
Yeah, that was the first thing my eye was drawn to.
Yeah, if or perhaps there's a first angle here, and this is our second angle, but this looks much better. This looks much cleaner as a second angle.
Yeah, I agree.
And then then you had whatever this is, like a 10-week rise into the top, and so semis are topped. That would be my conclusion, that some semiconductors are topped. We probably had a week 15 intermediate cycle low here, and then we might maybe like as stocks move into their what I believe will be to a higher into the beginning of December, then maybe this gets to challenge, come up here, but it's probably a lower high, and then all of a sudden we're setting up like a double top. And like a double tops measure move is from 280 to 220, well, then we come down here to 115 if you're taking the measured move of it anyways, or 120 or something like that. So semis look like they're topped. And if you put that in the context of those guys that we listened to the other day that were like, oh yeah, bro, price go up, bro, like, oh man,
it's a new paradigm. It's a new paradigm. Yeah. AI's here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think things are looking stretched. Dow Jones here. I'm going to take away this little arrow here, but like Dow Jones, this looks like a kind of a parabolic rise too. So I do wonder if maybe you get a higher high in the SPX, a higher high in the NDX, but that maybe Dow is topped out. Maybe you can get one little higher high up here, but this kind of looks like a pretty parabolic move here. So I don't know.
Dave Hunter's
suspicious. Pardon me?
Sorry, David Hunter's target I think is 55,000.
Don't make me laugh. That's outrageous. But that, what I found that every time that we're getting to, I guess I've followed him for a few years. Like whenever we're like clearly like things are parabolic, he always has like a higher target that's like outrageous. And I think it's a clickbait target. I don't think it's a real target. I think he just says it because people listen to like whatever if you can give it more outrageous target, people are going to listen to it. It's ridiculous. I would say that we could tap the top of this fork at 44K, but we might even be done here. So we come down here with stocks into December, and then we maybe come back and make a double top or something like that, or a divergent high, something like that. But when stocks top, they often don't top exactly at the same time. You'll have one that makes a high here, and then a couple months later, another one makes a high. So I think that that's a very good chance that the Dow has topped. I mean, this has formed a weekly swing high, And if we take that as a week 25 intermediate cycle low, then this was, I mean, week 27 already. So it's not surprising that this candle is so strong and coming down. So yeah, the Dow is topped short term, at least short term. And then maybe we're going to get a move down into the low 40K and then come back up and then continue down. And then it's a big sell off from there. But I do think that by the theory that I had was that the Santa Claus rally comes normally around from mid-December or the December 20th until like the beginning of January. My theory was that, we'll run up until the time of the Santa Claus rally and then it's done. And instead of continuing going, I mean, the price has pulled all demand forward already, and it's going to drop off from there. And everyone will be anticipating a Santa Claus rally from whatever it is, mid-December on. But it's not going to happen. And that's when the decline sets in hard. It'd be from, December 10th or 15th or 18th or something like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see
So,
that. I've got every time I get into January for a new year, I'm always thinking to myself, "Oh man, stocks are gonna crash." And then if they don't, I'm really relieved. But it seems to me that a lot of the time that the market tops, it tops in the first, they let it run into December and then it starts to top, and by January it starts to become obvious. So yeah, I
mhm,
don't know. It would fit if it happened again this time around, but maybe I just got caught once or twice early on in my career with that. But every
mhm.
time it gets around to January, I start the year stressed out because I'm just like, oh, hope the market doesn't tank.
That's funny. Well, yeah, I think January will be tanking. Like if I go back to this is like my big picture chart here for me. Like I think that will be topped by before January and that the decline will start. And then whether that's only a 20% decline into a 4-year cycle low, or if it's the start of a much larger decline. We'll have to that's I suppose that's kind of um up for interpretation here, but we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell.
It makes a lot of sense to me. It does. Well, yeah, like you say, time will tell.
I don't know. Is there any other charts you wanted to talk about?
If you have time to run through any crypto equities, I'd love to see those.
Sure. I've mostly just been tracking Mara. Let me find. I think I have it. So okay, I guess I just updated this one recently. So I mean, it's following Bitcoin, right? It's going to find a daily cycle low. And I kind of thought that might come all the way back down here. That's going to depend on how far Bitcoin goes down, but it should break this trend line here, and it can come down to to the 16 or 15 area, and then possibly if it's going to decline to the election, it has time, right? If there's more time for decline, then it can go further down. So it could go into the 14 area, which is, I mean, I put this box here, and I mean, this is the timing. So whether it's up here or here, this is the timing I'm kind of looking for. So I'll be looking for Mara to come. And then from there it should be like this is a pretty bullish chart overall. It's like just from the technical trader in me, we had we have a very large rounded bottom here, and then we have this another kind of the same inverted head and shoulders kind of move here. So once it finds this bottom, I do think that it's going to be very, very powerful. But time is not really on its side if we're topping in 2024, or if we're going to get some sort of top in 2024. It can do something like this like very quickly. Let's just like 5 weeks and it went up to like I don't know, about 200%. So we go from here and make a new high. But I'm skeptical if I'm right that things are going to go top in 2024, and maybe that'll end up being wrong. But if I'm right, then it's hard to see getting a new all-time high. Like I put this up here. I don't know. I have a hard time seeing that happening. But in crypto, things can happen so damn fast that you can't rule it out. Like here, this is how many weeks? But look at this. This is 6 weeks. 6 weeks from 30 to 80, so about 150% move. But I mean, if we just, I don't know, go take one of these, and you can't rule this kind of stuff out, right? So would that be that shocking? I mean, No, I mean, not really. Because
No,
I
I
mean,
don't
that's
think
just
so.
gonna if Bitcoin goes to 100K in 6 weeks, then sure, Mara is gonna go to $60. But I'm not sure about a new all-time high if Bitcoin's gonna top in 2024 or perhaps early 2025. But I think that like for me, psychologically, like I'm open to being wrong about this, but this is what makes sense to me. Like sentiment, um, uh, regular Bressert cycles, because you got our 4-year cycle that should be due, that should come, and then we just don't know about this bounce. So we'll see.
Do you track?
But I think, but sorry, go ahead.
Do you track MicroStrategy by any chance?
I have it here. Um, okay, apparently I do track it. So we had a low here on week 44. I haven't looked at this in a while. So that would be a right translated 44. Um, I mean, it looks really good, right? This is a very, very good looking chart. You gotta put this on log. Um, and so I think we probably come up to this area here. We have some resistance on this 4 from down here. We probably come up around 450 would be my guess. Um, but it looks good. Like, it bottomed with Bitcoin, and then unlike all the other crypto miners, it started moving from there. Like Mara dipped additionally after this low. So it looks good for me. This is week 11, so it probably makes it's going to keep going. I think. What's the daily chart look like? Maybe the daily cycle stretched. We have looks like daily cycle 1, and then this is. I mean, this is a really strong move. Like this probably. Wow, this looks really nice. Really a great setup. Probably come down, break this trend line, um, but then it's probably like 1 angle, 2 angle, 3 angle,
Yeah.
and then just rip up into the 450, 460, 470 area. Like that's what this looks like. I mean, maybe comes back down and tests like the tops here, kind of this area here. Got some support here on the side, so around that's I don't know around just under $200. But like I mean, this looks like a really really good chart that wants to do things. Like we have this like this is like you don't know what these things are until they start moving. But like this is now you say this was an accumulation range.
Yeah.
We had this dip here. This is like your spring on the if you're using white cop, you get the spring here, and then it's just moving up here, and then this would essentially be this is almost like the SOS here, and then have another move down to your daily cycle low, and then it should be expansion, and a rapid rise would be like the interpretation that I take from this chart. I mean, it looks like a great chart. If I was comparing it to Mara, I would probably want to take Mara. If I was someone who said, which one would you rather be long? I mean, they're both great looking charts. I would say Mara looks like it will likely outperform. I actually had, I don't know where it is anymore. I had a Mara versus MSTR chart. And I remember it looked like Mara was going to be outperforming, which you would expect towards the end of the cycle. The stocks that aren't as great fundamentally will outperform. An MSTR, it's at least it has its own business. It's not just mining Bitcoin, so it has a business case outside of Bitcoin. Although the reason it has a $234 price tag is because of Bitcoin, not because of the original MicroStrategy business. But they look like great charts.
Do
And
you
here's another
agree?
one.
Do you
It's
agree
really
that?
good.
Sorry, just before you do hot, do you agree that MSTR is potentially leading Bitcoin?
I think it has to be. I think that's very clear. Like it's getting new highs. Like none of the other ones are getting new highs. Like Riot still down, Mara is still down, Bitfarms still down, Hut still down comparatively. Although Hut's been outperforming here, obviously compared to the other ones. But MSTR, it's clearly the leader, right? And it even like when this is the December 2022 bottom, and it's been a really good chart. Like really, like it's been moving up. Whereas Mara, who's supposed to be one of the better miners, like you can just see the underperformance that's been happening. Like it's much worse. So yeah, MSTR is definitely leading, and it's definitely pointing the way for Bitcoin. I think we should expect to see Bitcoin continue to rise out of this low here. Once we get that daily cycle low, like I think it's once we get the daily cycle low in, like it's going to be off to the races, and it's going to be It's been a while since Bitcoin had like up only, but I assume that we're going to have some up only starting, within a couple weeks.
Yeah,
A
I
little bit
tend to
more
agree.
patience.
Yeah.
And you had the one guy that you follow. It's Crypto NB. I don't even know how to say it.
Narber.
Knobber. That's the one. Crypto Knobber. That's a funny name. Anyways, um, he showed an Elliott wave count that just it matches this actually really well, where it comes back down here and it's kind of like some sort of running flat. I can't really quite remember. ABC correction, then followed by some more corrective moves before getting a fifth wave out. And so that just makes most sense to me, is that we're going to come up and then we're going to be doing something like that,
Yeah.
going up really hard and kind of catching people off guard. There's probably going to be, we'll get down to here in the daily cycle low, and then it's like, as always, there's the FUD, and there's people. Oh, it's definitely breaking down here, man. It's going to go lower. So we're gonna go sub 49. But that'll be, I think, a great buying opportunity, longing opportunity.
Yeah, and I really think the setup is there to see. Oh, sorry, my dog's making weird noises behind me. I really think the setup is there to have everyone, as it starts to make that decline into that daily cycle low, have everyone saying 49k is programmed, right, or 40k, or some absurdly low numbers. And I really think the pain trade is to just reverse it and have a lockout move that doesn't let anyone in, very few pullbacks, shallow pullbacks, and it will lead people to go, well, I'm not buying that, and then it squeezes up even higher, and they go, well, I'm definitely not buying that, and then the next thing you know, they're like, oh no, I missed it. So I think that's what it's setting up for. That's what my experience is telling me makes the most sense. So it's cool to see that you're kind of seeing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, even like when you get these kind of flat initial cycles, they end up being very, very, very strong moves out of them. I've always found. Like you go, like if you or where did I have Bitcoin? Oh, ok, pin it up. Je te parle dans une minute, d'accord? Une minute, j'ai presque fini. Okay, I'll talk to you in a second. Okay. Okay, you know what? Actually, that's going to be where I got to cut off.
No problem, brother.
Get interrupt now. But anyways, my expectation would just be that after this daily cycle low, we move out. I'll move out of it and move hard and fast out of it. Like when you get these flat daily cycles off to start off with, where you can't price comes back down, it's like an elastic band, and it comes down and then it just shoots up.
Yep, sounds great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Well, thank you very much for your
Anyways.
time. I know you're super pressed for time and stuff, so have a great day. Thanks for being here. If you want to plug anything, feel free to do it. If not, I think people know where to find you. I'll put a link to your Twitter in the comment and
Just
description.
Twitter's it, so just at Gold and Guitars. And I update it when I can. As you notice with my daughter coming into the room, I get pretty busy, and I got a full-time job. So, but thanks for the chat. It's been great, and cross our fingers, and I think we're going to see some really solid price action coming out.
Yep, sounds great. Well, thank you very much again, and I'm sure I'll speak soon. In the meantime, take care.
Yep.
All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.
Bye.